Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you. I would like to call this meeting to order. I have 6:33. And I would like to begin with public comment. I hadn't seen any emails from Celeste regarding public comment, so.
And I didn't have any.
Okay.
Is there anybody on YouTube now, Celeste, that you can see that would like to make public comment?
So that must be a no.
Celeste, you're muted if you answered me.
There's nobody on YouTube at all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no public comment, I'd begin with reviewing our norms. Would someone care to do that?
I don't have them in front of me, so.
Okay,
I can do it.
thank you.
Thank you.
As a board, we will focus on student outcomes, be open-minded, respect each other, value different viewpoints, be responsive and responsible to our community, make decisions based on data and facts, listen to each other, be reflective, and run meetings that respect time, have concise agendas, are transparent, and follow Robert's rules.
Thank you. Randy, can you just remind me with the consent agenda, do we need a motion and we're just move on? Okay.
Yes, you need a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Okay. If I could get a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved.
Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you. So Michael made the motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any discussion? Okay. I will do the roll call. Corey?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Next, we have our focus on learning presentation on equity. So
Brooke,
that
yeah,
we'll turn it over to Brooke, but you're going to screen share, Randy?
No, not for this one. Brooke's
Oh,
going
okay.
to talk about some of the work happening
Okay.
so far in the year at Mettawee.
Okay, perfect.
All right, well, welcome. It's great to see all of you this evening. I want to begin by saying our equity work began this summer when the leadership team met for a retreat. And we were able to, as a leadership team, go through kind of one module that was set out for us to lead in the SU. And our goal is to have at least 5 sessions with all staff members at Mettawee. We began the work this summer in August with part of the module 1. And that kind of like works with our own work with implicit bias and kind of having a larger conversation about what we found out about ourselves. And that is scheduled for the Tuesday, October 27th. So that work will begin with all staff members. And I have scheduled between now and February different modules for us to come together for all of us to have larger discussions about different topics. I also want you to know that I did 2 different professional developments this summer. One of them, I attended the Vermont Principals Association, and this year's focus was on equity. And there were amazing keynote speakers that I was able to be a part of. And the great news is that this is going to be ongoing learning. So the people that I met this summer will be leading work 1 speaker a month throughout the year. So we'll be looking forward to continuing our work together. One of the main speakers that I could resonate with, her name was Shane Sapphire, and she wrote the book, The Listening Leader. And I've actually just purchased it, and I'm starting to listen to that on an audible book. And she had some really great ideas for me to take off as a leader. And one of the quotes that kind of has stuck with me is saying, big journeys begin with small steps. So thinking about the small steps that we can do as a school that will lead us to supporting all of our own work along with supporting our students. And some of the things that she talked about is creating a brave space for us to feel successful, to be able to open up. And some of those things have to do with making sure we're being good listeners, that we're kind of gathering our own street data, our own community data, to build fluency within our work and to practice creating a warm demeanor by asking questions, pausing and reflecting. And it's really important to begin with sharing our own stories, daring to be vulnerable and sharing kind of our own thoughts and feelings. And we did that with listening to Brene Brown as our first session. She talks about the importance of being courageous and having like different qualities within us as we're leading. So we did that as a staff, and it was really a great conversation that all the staff members kind of were able to share their own thoughts and feelings about some of the quotes and stuff that she had shared. The second professional development that I attended was the BEST conference. I did that with a small group of people in our school. And one of the keynote speakers was Rose Marie Allen. And she shared her story, and we have it recorded. So my hope is to share this with the staff as well. And it was just listening to her and what it was like for her and her family growing up. And I think her personal story has really engaged all of us with really being empowered to continue to do the work that we need to do. Some other things that we've been doing within our own building is really being intentional about purchasing books and materials. This is something what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years in our library, but really extending it to all classroom teachers. So when they were ordering this year, we really wanted the majority of the things that they were purchasing or using in their classroom coming from different perspectives and different authors. And I think we did a really good job with that. And I'm already hearing students talking about some of the books that their teachers are reading aloud and having those conversations. Today, I got an email from a parent thanking Kelly Alfelt for her lesson this week, using different materials to really create a conversation with the fourth graders and talking about things that were really important for fourth graders to begin a discussion about. But the main thing that I also want to share with you is outside the kind of the work day, Mettawee teachers are spending some time learning more about equity and inclusion. And it's a group that are coming together monthly to talk about just learning more about how to be more inclusive and equitable, and how we can engage in reading different books on their own time. And some of those titles are shared amongst all staff to like suggest reading. And we're spending time talking about many different voices and having kind of different focuses each month that really get us to talk about books. And I think that's been very engaging. All of the efforts by teachers are aimed at being educators to serve all of our students and families. And we're working on just being lifelong learners. We know that this is just a beginning, but we have a long ways to go. But sharing our experiences, our personal stories, has really opened all of us to feel more comfortable being able to talk about books. And it's great. When we began, we had some titles in mind that we wanted to, but as we're starting to read, more and more people are suggesting titles. So now my hard part is just how do I keep up with all the reading? Because there's a lot of great books out there that we really want to engage the staff members to read and our students. So we feel like we've come a long way, but we know we have a long ways to go. And I feel like the staff is really open to these modules coming up. And we're looking forward to working together throughout the year. And like I had mentioned, we already began the work in August, and we'll continue each month to do that.
Thank you so much. Love to hear that stuff. Okay, we'll move on to you, Randy.
Sure. So I asked all of our principals, we had talked about presenting goals in August. And then I asked all of our boards if we could extend that and do presentations for boards in October, since we had so much going on with school preparation in August. So I've asked all the principals to create about a 5-minute presentation of the school goals. They're all mapped, connected to our SU goals, and there's an academic goal as well as a more social emotional goal. So Brooke is going to share. I'm going to share my screen with you in a minute, and she's going to run through her goals with you. So it should probably take about 5 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you'd like. Okay. So let me share my screen. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Okay, can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, right, you can see it?
Yep.
Okay, all right, Brooke, so just let me know. I'll try to time it. I sometimes jump the gun, so sorry
Okay.
about that, but
That's right. All right, so our one academic proficiency goal that we're working on, all of this work kind of stemmed from us working together at looking at data this spring, and many different stakeholders were involved with that conversation. Our leadership team consisted of 3 teachers and our coach and Karen Standard all kind of looked into the different types of data. And what we came up with is by the end of 2021 school year, using a comprehensive computer adaptive assessment data, we will indicate the consistent implementation of the BRSU supported curriculum and instructional models that leads to continuous learner growth as evident by 10% increase in the number of students scoring at grade level in the area of reading for grades 1 and 2. So this kind of stems from looking at our past data and consistently seeing that our youngest learners have a weakness in the area of foundational skills, which is part of the reading assessment that we are doing. So our hope is to really dive deep into that and some of our action steps that we are going to take in order for us to get there. Currently, our staff will attend the iReady trainings. So some of them happen this summer. There were 2 different ones, and we actually recently just took the kind of an iReady certification in order for us to launch the testing in our school. Teachers will participate in professional development that includes instructional practices, such as engaging our students and giving effective feedback. The administrative leaders in our school will continue to do walkthroughs, looking for very specific things like high levels of engagement for our students and whether their learning targets are clear and understandable for our students. Our instructional coach is going to work with our teachers in our building to ensure that we're delivering high quality tiered 1 instruction. And right now she put out a survey asking specifically for each teacher what kind of goals they want to work on. And there are different models that she's doing to support our teachers. And she's very involved right now with supporting our teachers in all different ways. And I feel like because she built relationships with them last year, we're ready to really launch off and using our coach in a very effective way at Mettawee. We also create a comprehensive K-2 literacy assessment plan, in which we've always done in the past, but now we're kind of narrowing it in and saying what are the most important pieces to our assessment to make sure we're collecting the information that we need for our students to meet this goal. And then ongoingly, we'll have monthly meetings with our classroom teacher and our literacy specialist and our coach. And that's going to be really specifically on what are we seeing from our students and the literacy data and how we're going to adjust our interventions to support our learners, which is a really important practice to make sure that we're really currently seeing if the kids are making growth, they no longer need the interventionist, or if some students struggling and they now need supports. I want to mention that these pictures are taken using the land next to us from Merck Forest. And this one really captured you could see the kids' attention out in the field. So for the 2021 school year, the Mettawee Community School will address our social emotional needs and well-beings of our students by implementing the responsive classroom and PBIS practices. And our hope is to increase in being able to have students identify their feelings and learn how to support themselves. And this is going to be based on a student survey that we'll be putting out for 3 times a year. So our hope is that our students are really going to identify their feelings and learn how to self-regulate. So some of the action steps, as we purchased last year a social emotional curriculum it's called Second Step. Our preschool teacher teaches the pre-K, and Colleen Jennings, our school counselor, teaches K-6. And this year we just purchased the 6th grade curriculum a few weeks ago. So our hope is to have a consistent approach with teaching social emotional skills for our students. The second action step is to create a social emotional team. This team was formed this summer, and those team members, most of them went to the BEST conference, which focuses on responsive classroom and PBIS. We'll be meeting monthly, and we'll be attending ongoing professional development workshops, and we'll be sharing the information with the staff And there was a forum that Ms. Jennings and I attended last week, and we'll be bringing that knowledge to our social emotional team. In this summer, when we did attend the BEST Institute, we created as a team a presentation that we shared out with all our staff members with the highlights and everything from creating a positive behavior support plan within our school, mindfulness activities that we can do with our students, and then lesson plans to make sure that we're really teaching the different aspects and our values of our school. And I'm really proud of the positive behavior support plan. So I'm just going to read you a little bit about that. We decided as a school that we really want to focus on being respectful, be responsible, and be safe. And we have very clear expectations of what it looks like in the classroom, hallway, bus, playground, online, mealtime, and restrooms. And we kind of identify during the beginning of the year for all of our students, what does it mean? What does it look like, feel like, and sound like in the classroom? For example, when we're talking about, let's see, how about we say the bus? To be respectful, you're going to talk kindly to your friends, your hands and feet are to yourself when you're going to listen to the bus driver. To be responsible, you're going to have a calm and quiet voice. You're going to stay in your seat, follow directions, and keep your belongings to yourself. And to be safe, you're going to follow the bus rules, wear your mask, have your hands to yourself, and stay facing forward in your seat. So it's very clear expectations for our students. And those are things that we're going to review with them ongoingly. But we feel like it's really important to kind of have those laid out for them. And how will we know if our students are able to support and show us the improvement with their emotional skills? Over time, we're going to see an increase in our Tier 1 programming, meeting a higher percentage of our students, and that will be indicated by having less office referrals for their behavior. And our hope is to have higher levels of engagement, and we'll be seeing that that there'll be an increase in student agency leading to higher levels of student engagement and achievement. So our hope is to really focus on the social emotional skills in our Tier 1 with our classroom teachers and with our school counselor. And thank you all. This year is like no other year that we've ever experienced. And we're working hard to set our goals and to successfully achieve them.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's
Thank
it. So I'm going to stop sharing and then we'll open it up for a few minutes for questions, okay?
Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
It said in the first panel that you showed us that that the previous data indicates that there would be 10% improvement in these skill sets. Is there a way that you have of sort of doubling back to verify that, or how does that actually work on the ground, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In the past, we've been able to compare data. We do big picture analysis for the fall, winter, and spring. So we will look at areas across the board, and we do this for every grade level. So in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all the way through, how many kids are low average or average and above. And I'm able to figure that out based on grade and based on content. So we do have that way of comparing across the year on students from the fall to the spring. And there's a report on that. But we are moving to a new assessment called iReady. And that assessment is being right now, the diagnostics test is taking place last week, this week, and next week. And by the end of that, we'll have reports. So our team will definitely need to use a new report and a new kind of way of comparing, but we will be able to compare the data from the fall to the spring. So we will have that in the new system that we have.
Great.
And that's the work that our leadership team will do. So we'll meet as a leadership team once a month, and each month we'll have a focus, but the first meeting will focus on the data that we receive this fall.
So Brooke, you set these goals in August, and how did you decide on the 2 goals?
So we really worked on like all spring in order to create our continuous improvement plan. We had to show the state kind of detailed analysis. So we went through like an inventory that looked at the proficiencies, like the academics, that looked at kind of the safe and healthy school information, like even office referrals to the nurse's office and the counselor and all of that. And so I felt like we did a really thorough job in each part. So once we looked at all the data, we kind of came up with what's the most important for us to focus on. And we knew with academics, the reading was really important. Based on the number of kids that we are serving right now for like interventions. And we just want to make sure that we're continuing to support our learners. For the social emotional goal, we've always, like the last couple of years, have really thought about the importance of us teaching our kids about the emotions, because more and more kids are coming dysregulated and we need to teach them about their feelings and how to respond to situations. And that's what the curriculum was all about. So we invested money last year. We launched it for the first year, but we didn't really collect a lot of information. So the student survey was one way or one measure for us to see how are kids reporting and how they're doing 3 times a year. And then the office referrals is another way to seeing that there's less students, coming to me with supports. So that's based on the information. We know social emotional is just as important as the academic. So that's why we wanted a goal in that area.
Thank you.
I also would like to do a parent survey. I think that'll be something next goal. I think starting with the students first, but it would be great to also, ask parents questions about the social, emotional, and health and wellness as well.
That seems like a really good idea. They could probably use a program of their own.
Can I ask a question about the survey? Like, are you giving it to all of your students, Brooke, or?
Yeah, it's going to be a K, well, not pre-K, but we're a K to 6 survey. And what we're thinking would be is a Google form. We believe that grades at least 3 through 6 could probably do it independently. But the younger grades will probably have a teacher read it to them. And then on their computers, they would click the responses. What's really nice about a Google form that you immediately get kind of different graphs that will show us the answers. So it's a really interesting way for us to kind of like, as a social emotional team, see kind of the areas that we're doing well and the areas that we need to work on. And we plan on doing a survey that will just not just touch social emotional, but like even health and wellness, about making sure they have plenty of food that will help me to know if they need their food in need. Talking about sleep for kids, how are they struggling with that? Do they need support? Kind of looking at the whole child and not just the social emotional.
And who's making the survey up? Have you already told me that? How
Nope.
is that?
It's a collection. So it's going to be Colleen Jennings, our school counselor, Mandy Mayer, our school nurse, and myself, the 3 of us. So we have done something similar in the past, but we really want to redefine it and making sure that we're asking really intentional questions about the social and emotional skills, and also about student engagement, which is another part of our goals, so making sure that kids are feeling engaged with the work that they're doing.
Okay.
And our goal is to have it go out in November, the first time.
Okay.
And for office referrals, I assume you have a system set up to sort of gather data, but keep it anonymous and safe. Okay.
The one thing that we do have is a kind of a behavior sheet that is everyone has a copy of that and what it looks like. What we need to work on is being consistent with using it, and also using a system to kind of track the information. If we were a full PBIS system, that it comes with a behavior management system. Because we're not fully implementing PBIS, we don't have access to that system. But with our own school, we have a student information system called ALMA, and we are able to put behavioral referrals in that. So it's a way for us to kind of see all of the referrals.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Is everyone all set to move on to the next item B?
Okay, so you have in your packet my monthly distribution and my report, as well as the FY20 year-end financials. So what we'll do first is we'll kind of open it up to me, and you can ask me any questions you want about my report, and then we'll turn it over to Sue to talk about end of year, any questions you have about the FY20 financials. So for my report, you've got lots of information there. And you also received communication from me last night regarding our first positive COVID case. So you have a lot of information. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Michael?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to thank you for that packet. And I also think that the erring on the side of caution around these things is personally, I think, an excellent approach to take. It keeps everybody safe. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit. Let me pull this up, but about the legislative activity that's going on, because I haven't really been paying much attention, and I'd love to
Sure.
just get a little clearer picture about what's happening in a bigger picture way.
Sure. That's, I just want to make sure I'm looking at what I actually put in here. So, so there are, there are a number of topics. Corona relief funds is a pot of money that every state received in order to support COVID relief expenditures. We've submitted our entire application, and we're hoping and expecting to get our grant notification within the next couple of weeks, which hopefully covers a substantial part of our expenses. We will then, once we have that information, we know how much we receive for the state through that funding source, then we're going to complete the application for another funding source for a grant called ESSER. So we're still kind of working through that. As I as I stated in my report, part of what happened through the legislature was increasing the money going to K-12 schools for COVID relief funds. So hopefully that translates to more of our costs being supported through the grant. So the second key piece is that the legislature decided that the school year would be reduced for students, mandatory days, from 175 to 170. So at this point, I have not made any decisions regarding whether that impacts anything we're doing or not. I want to kind of connect with some stakeholders and weigh our options about whether we do anything or we don't do anything. I know that there are a couple thoughts, there are actually probably many thoughts about what the possibilities are, but I don't want to rush into anything. I want to make sure that if we decide to change anything in our calendar, it's intentional and for the right reasons. So I don't know if it's going to make a difference at all for what we're doing. So the other piece, and this links to the documents, the student count documents, concerned that most school districts in Vermont saw a reduction in students this year, right? We've talked about that a couple times at our previous meetings. So you saw, I believe, is it 19? I think that's where we were for Mettawee.
It was.
A reduction. Thank you. So what that means is that if our ADM, our average daily membership number, drops, then that means we get a reduction in reimbursement from the state. So since so many districts saw a decrease, one of the relief options that the legislature passed was that ADM would not go below what our numbers were for 2019 to 20. So that's a big deal. That helps. Oh. So we aren't going to feel the hit of that 19 students when we're budgeting for next year. So that's helpful for the Mettawee School District. The other piece of information that I don't think I put in here is that the legislature, Sue, correct me if my language is wrong on this, but they directed, we typically get a letter on December 1st around the yield, and the state didn't want the ed fund deficit to be passed on to taxpayers and impact that yield number. So we will not be getting guidance from the state that indicates in any way that the taxpayers will be absorbing the shortfall in the ed fund for FY22. So that's another provision that's helpful for us as we look ahead to developing our FY22 budget. So I'm going to jump, just because it kind of flows with this for a second. Sue's about to present to you FY20 end of year. Next month, we're going to give you an FY21 year to date anticipated where we currently stand. And then in December, we'll meet with our FY22 draft. So we're kind of presenting the financials in this order to kind of contextualize, hey, where do we end in FY20? Where are we going in FY21? What's our budget proposal for FY22? And all of these pieces that I included in my superintendent report all are impacting our work as we move ahead to develop that budget. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's under your enrollment and it's the second paragraph, and I'm just not understanding what it is. You say there are 101 students, 60, and then 18 of them are from Mettawee, 1 in Windhall. I'm just having a hard time with the math that the remaining 82 live in the T and G. But
Yeah. So,
101, right?
so
I don't remember.
okay. So you had asked, and I was providing for everyone home study numbers. So at the end of last meeting, you had asked me, and I know we had provided that for you. I was giving you a comparison. Typically we have 60. This year we had 101. So there's a pretty significant increase.
I get that.
So of the, so 18 of those 101 were in Mettawee, 82 were Taconic and Green, and 1 was in Windhall, which Celeste was correcting my math, but I think that adds up to 101.
Okay. I wasn't adding it that way, so okay.
I believe, I think I said something inaccurate, less updated, but yeah, it equals 101, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Randy?
Yes, Scott.
So I was wondering if that was, part of the reason for the drop of enrollment. I mean, if you add back the increase in homeschooling, I mean, would you say that we're kind of more on an even par from where we were? Or?
Well, right, we said that you're 19 under budget, and you have 18 students in home study.
Yeah.
So that is a wash.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And probably the increase in home study, it's obvious. I mean, just wanting to be safe and with COVID and.
Right. It's all over the state.
Yeah.
I think they said there's like 150% increase in home study applications this year.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Do you have any more questions for me? I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Taconic and Green. This is my first few months with you as a superintendent, and I wanted to ask you if there's anything more, anything less that you would like in my report. I know I've been giving you a lot of information. They're pretty long. I don't know if you're feeling like it's too much information or you like getting that much information. So I wanted to just give the board an opportunity to give me feedback if there's anything different you'd like me to do.
I'll go.
Diane?
When I was reading it, I started to feel like it was too much. And I was specifically, I guess I found myself, well, where's Mettawee in all of this? Where's Mettawee in all of this? So I don't know if there's a way to, present. I certainly appreciate and know the value in understanding what's going on, but I also didn't want to have to, I guess I was looking for more Mettawee in a way. So that was just my initial, when I've read it over, I was like, where, what? So those are my thoughts.
I also noticed that I usually do some of the same updates that she does, but more specifically to Mettawee. But this month, because the presentation focusing on equity and our goals, I didn't feel like there was much more to report out on. But usually each month I do focus on if there was something within our building, I would report out on, or anything like within our own community. But we haven't had any community events yet this year and probably won't be. But that's what I usually focus on my report on.
I appreciate how thorough the report is. Actually, I like all of the information because it sort of makes it all make sense to me, hearing from not from a broader group. So I like it.
Okay, well, if you can always email me as well. If you would prefer to do that, I'm comfortable, but I'm definitely open to feedback. So thank you. Okay.
I definitely appreciate I appreciate extra information. I get what Diane is saying because it's sort of like a lot to read and then looking for something that's specific to us. But I do think that it probably is helpful to have some information about the other schools, because I feel like it all sort of connects and is relevant. In some way, maybe not now, but maybe like coming down the pipe, that stuff will become relevant to us. If that makes sense.
All right.
It's like it's a big shared kitty to some degree, at least financially speaking. So
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because there's a literal cat.
But in that way, it feels like the report is applicable to our little piece of that. We just don't really have the details about to what percentage or what degree, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And I think part of that is the difference, right? The difference between a superintendent's report, which is a system level report, and a principal report, which is a building level report. And, you know, and so, and typically, you know, we're going to find that balance for you around when are we focusing on the building and when are we focusing on the district. And so we'll keep working on that balance. I think that it's important. And the feedback is helpful. So thank you.
I did have one quick question, Randy.
Yep.
About this, the sub situation.
Yes.
You're thinking, you had mentioned there was a line about worrying about having to do remote for an entire class. Do you just mean like if there was a day that there was nobody available, it would have to be sort of, it could potentially be a last minute, hey, you all have to stay home?
It could be. Yeah. I mean, we are spending an extensive amount of time on this problem solving, trying a wide range of responses and approaches to getting more subs. But, you know, the reality is there's not a lot of people who are interested in subbing in schools right now. And so I want to be really transparent with people that it is possible, due to probably a number of reasons, that there might not be enough coverage for buildings, and principals are working very hard to come up with all kinds of sort of coverage plans in an emergency, or, you know, based on one lack of sub, two laps of, at what point am I saying, hey, I can't bring kids in because I don't have anybody to teach this class today. So that's a last resort, but I just wanted to be very upfront about the fact, because some principals are very, very worried about that for their buildings.
Yeah, wasn't there some regulation where if you were subbing, you had to pick what district, so you can't sub for one district and then another district or something like that?
There's not a regulation or a sort of official guidance on that, but in an effort to try to reduce and mitigate exposure and spread,
It's understandable.
people were trying to think creatively, because the idea would be, if we're assigning people to certain buildings that they already enjoy working in, they may feel more comfortable subbing because they're not going everywhere. And we would potentially have more regularity with subs in those buildings, right? It was sort of a mutually beneficial arrangement. But we're not quite sure how that's playing out. So even within our system, we're kind of expanding out from that a little bit, and because some people just aren't responding to sub jobs, and we're not entirely sure why. We also posted for basically building level subs. Do you want to come work for us? We'll hire you as an employee, and you can be at one building or in two buildings in every day. So you've got consistency of work. That hasn't yielded any applicants either. So we're open to suggestions. Anything else before we move on to Sue? Okay, so you got your FY20 financials. Sue is, look at how happy she's sitting there waiting to answer any questions you have. I don't know if you would like for Sue to run through this for you, or to just be prepared to answer any questions you have. It's up to you how you want to navigate that.
I would like a Sue rundown.
You want me to, how about I summarize briefly?
Yeah.
And then you guys can ask questions. So we ended the year in a better place than we thought we were gonna. right? We thought we were going to have a $157,000 deficit back when we prepared the budget and showed it to the voters. So that was pre-COVID. And then we did an anticipated review for you guys in the spring at the end of April. And we thought we'd end up with an $89,000 deficit, still being conservative, not knowing how much of the budget we would actually spend. And then we ended up with a $33,000 deficit. So in a much better place than we originally thought we were going to be in. And, you know, a big chunk of that is some savings in the secondary program. You know, we always have movement right throughout the year with our kids that are going to high school. And so we're just because we have an FTE in January doesn't mean that's where we're going to land in June. So we did have some savings through the secondary program. And of course, there are going to be savings in areas where we didn't have to spend money at the school level, at the building level, right? And also some staff savings for kids, for costs supporting kids that are going to other schools, you know, transportation support, that kind of thing. With transportation, we were able to save some money on the bus contract because the buses obviously weren't running. So there were a lot of little bits and pieces that added up to that to help drop that deficit down for year end. And since when we prepared the budget, we anticipated having to make up that shortfall, that $157,000 shortfall. That was included in our FY21 budget presentation. So we basically have grabbed all that money for this year, but we only need 33. So we're starting out the year in a much better place. So that's good going into looking at FY21 anticipated. The other thing to point out, I've given you guys some information on the CRF funds. Randy mentioned that a little bit, that the state expects to hopefully fully fund our CRF requests. And so I gave you a summary of what that looks like across the BRSU, where the spending was. There's two categories of spending that we get reimbursement for from CRF. One category is the unbudgeted expenses. And those are expenses that obviously we would not have put in our budget. Things like buying packaging for the food service program, right? We wouldn't have needed such a thing. So that's a COVID request, and that's unbudgeted. So we get reimbursed for that. And the other things are called repurposed. And those are expenses that we would have included in our budget. So we can support it and pay for it because we collected revenues for it. So what we do is we're basically pulling down CRF funds to support that COVID related cost. And then the ed fund our ed fund payment for next year will be reduced by that same amount of money. So it's a wash for the school district, but the ed fund will reap the benefit of that. So it's sort of transferring the funds into the ed fund. And the AOE, worked with us over the last 6 months trying to figure out the best way to go about doing this. Not every district was able to do it. We were able to do it. So we pulled as much repurposed funds down as we could in order to support the ed fund.
Does anyone have any questions for Sue?
None?
I know, I'm surprised. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
It was a lot. So, but it looks promising. And
Yeah.
do you think, do you think that the next year's looking terrible or?
Well, I mean, I would say that I wouldn't think that you're going to see a big change between FY21 and FY22, given that the legislature has allowed us to keep our ADM number stable. They don't expect to lower the yield to make up the shortfall in the ed fund. Those are all good things going into the tax rate for FY22 to keep us stable. And then we're going into the year with a little more money than we anticipated having. We also expect any current year, any FY21 expenses that are unbudgeted and have to go towards COVID, things like all the plexiglass and masks and PPE, social distancing materials, all of those kinds of things that wouldn't have been in our budget are all going to be covered by the CRF funds this year. So there's no added expense for COVID. There's going to be savings because of COVID. We're still in the same place. There's still going to be some limitations on professional development. There's expenses that we may not have simply because we don't have as much operations going on. So I would expect us to be in a better place in FY21 than we would have if we were, operating normally. So going into FY22, knowing that the state is keeping things pretty stable for us, I think we should be fine with our tax stabilization funds and the anticipated surplus going into next year, that we should be able to keep our tax rates stable, I would think. But we'll know more in a few weeks when I put all the numbers down on paper.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, so the last item under this kind of report is probably really not my report, but you had wanted to continue your discussion around policy governance. And so given you heard the presentation last month from Taconic and Green, and so Julie, I'll probably just turn this over to you to facilitate the board's discussion around, thoughts about policy governance and whether there are next steps, and if so, what are those?
Sure. Okay, so my recollection is like 2 meetings ago, we had talked about whether or not we wanted to put this on ice and just wait a while. There was some concern about if we just keep kicking the can down the road, do we just kick the can down the road for forever and that's our new game, or are we really going to do this? And then our decision was to listen to a presentation from T&G and get a handle on the load of work that we can expect from this. And then we were going to review after that presentation where we wanted to move to. So I guess that's where we're at now, is seeing if we're ready to make a decision about policy governance, or if we still want to stick with our, like, let's just sort of kind of keep practicing and make a decision later. So I'll open the floor to the other board members just to check in and see what your thoughts and feelings are on this. Don't all jump at once.
Then I'm going to say, I still feel like I need to know a little bit more before I push the final one. I don't know what's holding me back specifically. I think their presentation was good and they all seemed very supportive, but I guess I just, I don't know. So since no one was saying anything, I think I feel like I need to practice more or understand it better, or maybe try to identify what my hesitations are. And I'm not sure I've been able to articulate that to myself, and that may be all that's stopping me. So those are my thoughts, I guess.
Okay.
As I recollect from our last meeting, there were some definitions, or there was a kind of a mission statement that I think we were trying to craft the language of a little bit more. And the little bit of thinking that I've done about this, I'm kind of feeling like, as in other things in my life, that it seemed like one thing I took away from the other board members in their talk about this was that this seems to be the direction that most school boards across the state and maybe beyond seem to be taking. I don't know if I was inferring that or not, but I got the impression that it's sort of the direction that many boards are moving in. And it seemed to me, even where there's parts of this that I really don't, I know I'm not getting it yet, there's a lot of sensibility to the few principles that I have walked away from with it. So my personal feeling is that I would be willing to make a commitment to such a thing. I know I won't be on the school board forever, but I think I'm in for at least 2 more years. And it seems like something that helps to reframe the way I think about not only, what the role is of the school board, but how the whole thing fits together in a bigger picture way that, again, I don't have all the parts and pieces together, but it feels like a worthy thing to pursue. I don't know if that's like some sort of full-on commitment, but that's my current sort of frame of mind about it.
I agree with you, Michael. And I think from my point of view, the the school boards that are doing policy governance seem so satisfied with it and very fulfilled and happy. It seems like it's a positive change across the board. So it seems like it allows them to work more efficiently and to just focus on big picture. And like I say, like the Taconic and Green is so happy with that move. It seems like a good model for us. And one thing I think, I don't know, Diane, because I feel this a little bit, is that like we're afraid to not be experts at it, like to take this on and fail at it or something.
Mhm.
I feel like we are working all together, so it seems like that shouldn't hold us back from making the commitment.
And I agree. I agree with that, because I think that's, I guess I am wondering, because Michael kind of hit a nerve, I think, when he said, like, it seems like everybody is moving in that direction. And maybe if I had is the state of Vermont working in that direction out of all the supervisory unions or out of all the boards, how many are doing in that? Maybe I need I'm a pretty data-driven person, so maybe I need to know that it's not just Tectonic and Green and not just this and not just someone telling. And so maybe I need to know more of those numbers. I don't know, but I kind of went, oh, Michael, that might be part of my hesitation is everybody doing it, and are they doing it in other states? I guess I was wondering about that, not just, I know Tectonic and Green, I've been there, so that might be part of my hesitation.
I don't actually have that information, Diane, but I'm happy to get it for you and share it with the board if people would like me to kind of give you a sense of, I really don't know. Michael, I'm not sure. I don't know if that's true that most are or how many are. So I'm happy if you would like me to get that to try to gather that information.
That would be great. Absolutely. Because again, it feels like this is some sort of thing that is looking to become a more unifying principle in between school boards. And maybe that is absolutely not the case. And yeah, I simply don't know, or even, because I know part of the way this is all structured is that each individual school board retains some power and autonomous sense of itself. So, and I appreciate that. So I don't know, it feels a little bit ambivalent, but yes, Randy, if that was something that we could get a sort of bigger framework on, how many districts in the state of Vermont are moving in that direction? I don't know, might make it a little abstract thing.
Well, I think that's a really good question, Diane. Yeah, I would be curious if it's a little bubble that's doing it, or if a lot of boards are using it. But I do getting the consensus, and I agree. I think the general concept, like, do we like the framework of policy governance? And I think it does kind of make you look at the whole process from a different perspective and with a framework. And I think it's really constructive. I guess it seems to me like we're mostly or all kind of in agreement that, it is a pretty good structure and something that works. I guess I'm wondering is the question at hand, are we semi putting it on hold just while we're going through this COVID thing, as far as, getting together with Val and doing more classes and taking more workload on. And I think that probably varies for us depending on, I think some people have more time right now and some people have less. And, there's just a lot of balls in the air with COVID right now, a lot to keep up with. So, one of the things we talked about is continuing to work within the framework and let's see kind of where things go. And when we want to dedicate the amount of, this is going to take probably a lot of dedication time-wise, I would think, to to take this on. I don't know. That would be hard for me right now. I know real estate's just ridiculous, but I know, Julie, you're seems to me you're kind of burning the candle at both ends. I see you at the store, and then you're racing down to the town office. But I think it kind of varies. So, so that's kind of my thoughts anyway.
Okay. What are you thinking, Diane?
Well, I guess I'm very curious about it because I like having the framework. There's some part of me who doesn't want to jump on something, a bandwagon, just because. So there's that part. And then I think that's why Michael, when he spoke, I said, yeah, I'm really curious about who in the state is doing it. And is it out of the state of Vermont, or are we creating something that just is going to be unique to Vermont again? And just knowing education, there are things that come through and you pop on them, and then you kind of, it cycles in and out. And so if you're going to make a big change, I'd really like to be comfortable, and I'm more comfortable with it than I'm not. But I just think that, to continue to use it, to try to kind of guide what we're doing and how we're doing and how we're looking at things as they're coming to us is a good thing for us to continue to do. I think I would like those answers to those, where is this coming from? And, I don't know if I need that, because I kind of know that, but just maybe answering those things. And, I totally hear what Scott's saying. I know that but I think that if we just keep incorporating into our meetings and keep thinking about it and maybe let's really try to think about it and take some action steps between now and, March or whenever set ourselves a timeline with it and try to stick to it. Maybe that would be something that would push me more to, get off the pot, so to speak. I don't know.
I'm just thinking that based on kind of what I've heard, that I can collect the information and find out how many districts are using policy governance. And then with those particular districts, I can follow up and find out how satisfied the board members are with their decision to make that transition. That might also be helpful information for you as a board. Hey, we've made the change, and this is kind of how we feel about that decision now that we've been doing it.
Yeah, how long have they been doing it? How does the community feel about it?
Right. That might be trickier to get an answer to. But
yeah, but I am curious about that. I think that's one of the things, as we sit here and we try to talk later tonight about how are we going to communicate to our community what it is. I think that's an important piece that we need to be able to explain to them, to be able to have them understand how this works now, because it is a change. So that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. So I'm gathering that we want some of these questions answered, which Randy is willing to do. And then also maybe we'll start incorporating things into our agenda planning. Like we are moving along with having the consent agenda portion of our meeting. And then we were doing a little bit of practice with different policies, going through them. Maybe we can do that. I don't know if we want to do it every meeting, every other meeting, or if we just want to, as issues come up, review the policies that go along with that, and perform our work through the lens of policy governance and just see how that goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, at this point it does.
Okay. Okay. So I think we can move along now to the meat and potatoes here of our meeting, which is the community engagement work that we're beginning. So we had a developing questions and determining stakeholders and how to engage them. I did have a Google Doc that I set up, and there were a couple of things written on it. So I guess following the agenda, the first one were developing questions for stakeholders. I don't know if all of you were able to access this Google Doc.
I did. I have mine all wonderfully written out, so I
Sure.
didn't get the document. I apologize for that, but I didn't know if I could hear what they were tonight or try to find the document or.
Yeah, so I'll just read to you right now what is on this. So, one person had, for employers within our community, what skills and values do you feel are lacking in our young community members when you are seeking employees? And what do you feel should be taught or incorporated in our schools and curriculum to help instill the skills and values?
Could you repeat that last one, Julie? I couldn't hear it.
So skills and values lacking in our community members when seeking employees, and what do you feel should be taught or incorporated in schools and curriculum to instill those skills and values?
Wow.
And then there was, why do you think public education is important? What is the goal of education? And what values do you feel are important for students to develop? That's all that's on that Google Doc right now.
So what was the guiding question was I'm going to lose power. I'm going to have to charge up. Is the are we supposed to be generating, because I took a more global view when I was developing questions. So, and that person was only talking about employers. And so I had a list of stakeholders. So like, it might be different if it was a senior citizen or if it was, like our fire department is lacking people to be in the fire department. And they're always trying to get younger people, or so if we tried to identify specific stakeholders.
Yeah, so I'm thinking it might make sense. I think I'm with you on this, Diane. I think it might make sense to skip to the next part and identify our stakeholders first.
Okay.
And then come up with specific questions for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Are you?
Well, that's what I started with my stakeholders. Like, who am I going to try to target in my community? Who do I want to ask? And then I wanted to know, then I was thinking, well, what is it that I specifically want to ask them? Like, what do you need for this community to be more successful? And that's going to possibly be different for a senior citizen versus a small employer versus you in the town hall trying to get an employee, or Mike in his factory. I don't know. So anyway, stakeholders.
Okay. So the Google Doc for stakeholders just had, the question was, who are our stakeholders?
Mm-hmm.
And so the list thus far is employers, students,
Okay.
Educators at the secondary level,
Oh.
parents, consumers of services provided by past students, community members / leaders, like librarians, church leaders, elected officials, law enforcement.
Okay.
Would it not also be the humble taxpayer?
Yes. Yes.
That's
Yes.
probably, so I'll say to you that if, just to contextualize our previous conversation, if you were a policy governance board, your stakeholders are your taxpayers. Those are the folks that you are representing.
Right.
So that would be that. And so then the question would be, how do we access the most diverse group of taxpayers to find out what they value in education, or whatever the question is? So I guess I'll just kind of throw that out there based on our other conversation.
But regardless of one's employment or lack thereof, or what the bottom line on that is, you're a stakeholder because you're paying taxes here or in these collective towns. And therefore we are essentially working for you, whoever you may be. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would be like approaching a subset of taxpayers.
Right.
Like the farmers, the old kind of farmers versus all the new kind of farming. What do they need to be successful? Because they're trying to sustain themselves, have employees, some of them anyway. So what do they need? You know, Laughing Farm, you know, we all see how they're working. Okay. I don't want to talk too much.
Right. I think one thing that I thought was kind of important is sort of the, I mean, yes, the bottom line is the taxpayers are the stakeholders in our system. But I think these questions are relevant to, I think the relevancy of this question extends beyond the people that are paying money for the education of our kids. And I think that it kind of goes back to my thing, like why is education important? I mean, everybody in the community, whether they have children and grandchildren in the system or don't, rely on the education of people that are in this community. And so they have a stake in whether or not that's a good education. Like they really do. I mean, do you want a society that runs amok, or do you want a society that functions well? You know, do you want intelligent, thoughtful, kind, empathetic people
well-informed
that are in our community? Like, what do you want your community to look like, and how can the schools facilitate that vision coming to life?
And, you know, I personally feel like, regardless of what your occupation is, there are going to be some across the board values that everybody shares, which I think is part of what you're speaking to, Julie, right? We are, regardless of what you do for a living, etc., we are all going to have certain, you know, standards concerning literacy, concerning exposure to other cultures, et cetera, that are really going to be the defining points of an education that's useful and practical for the people undergoing it.
I think listening to both Mike, you and Julie, it's you know, you're talking about, you know, what type of person do we want coming out of our education system? You know, it's not just the classic, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic. It's I keep hearing, you know, what values, you know, empathy, you know, how are they going to make our community better? So it does go beyond just those kind of classic, what you think of as education, you know. So I think, you know, it starts to form a framework of what some of those questions might be, you know, what values and what skills. And so, Julie, when you were talking about defining the stakeholders, was your idea maybe that, you know, you have these different stakeholders and they're different almost subcategories of, you know, like one stakeholder, you'd have one set of questions that might differ from another stakeholder. It seems like depending on who you're asking, your questions might be different.
And I mean, I think it's important for parents to have a say in what the education of their children looks like, right?
Yeah,
It's important for people that have no children in the system currently and maybe never did and never will, to have a say in what they're willing to spend their money on, right? That goes back to the taxpayer thing. And you also have employers who should have, you know, a say in what they need for skills, you know, literacy, math skills, but also the social emotional health of the people that are coming into their system, right? Because if you have I mean, I'm sure Michael's shaking his head, so I'm sure he's probably had an employee in the past that like brings everybody down. It's important that we think about that whole child thing, like Brooke was talking about earlier, because we want healthy, you know, healthy functioning people. Because if you can read an ad, but you're a hot mess, it's not helpful.
I'm laughing because a friend recently said, you don't hire people, you adopt them. And there is a dimension of truth to that, depending.
There is.
Okay, so did you have any other additions to the stakeholder list, Diane? I know you had written a bunch of things down.
So I did have senior citizens. I guess I felt like if we were going to ask questions, that I wanted to make sure that we identified as many subsets of that tax-paying group as we could. You know, obviously the parents, possibly students, even, you know, those that could maybe, but making sure that we really hit all the small businesses that that we could in town, from, you know, the real estates and the constructions and the lawn cares and, you know, the stores and the town government pieces, and because they could be asked a lot of the same questions. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I was, you know, the farmers, just trying to make sure that we were hitting a variety of people. And I think we'll find that the needs are pretty much the same. That's what I would think.
Yeah, I think there'll be overlap. I think that there'll be, you know, maybe some outliers here and here, but the bulk would probably.
So what I hear you saying is, how do we, you know, whatever our distribution and collection method is, you want it to be as inclusive as possible.
I do. I would think we all would, but I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's ultimately what you want. You want to make sure you're hearing from as diverse a group of community members as is possible. And I think you should think about how different really do the questions need to be? Because what is the, if you're looking for information for a reason, and you're clear on what that reason is, there are only going to be a few questions you can ask to give you that information.
I think that the question should be very smallish and
I don't know.
You left us hanging, Diane.
We lost you.
Yeah, I mean, in thinking about that further, yeah, the questions probably should be pretty consistent. And then you ask the different groups those same questions. I think the one group that might be interesting, that might be some different answers, would be asking the students those questions. I'd be curious to see what they think they should come out with.
And you've got, you know, again, students through 12th grade.
Yeah.
So please make sure you're including all your kids, which I think is important.
Yeah, not just Mettawee, but all the way
Correct.
up through. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So I'm thinking for parents and students, well, even also for taxpayers, I mean, could we put something in the report that gets mailed out? That's like a survey link or a page that they can tear out and send in to us?
It sounds
I
like a
can look
great-
into that.
great
That
idea.
might be a good idea.
Really good idea.
Yeah, let me look into it and see if there's anything that would prevent us from being able to do that.
You know what? Another interesting group to ask would be recently graduated students that are going into either the workforce or going to college as they move into the kind of the real world.
I just added that to the
Yeah.
thing right
you
before
have a-
that because I was
Yeah,
thinking of
Because
like,
all of
yeah,
a sudden there's like, geez, I wish
Yeah.
I wish I had this skill, and I don't feel, that could be
and it's fresh in their
need that,
minds.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And like secondary and post-secondary educators, like who are
Mhm.
getting kids as they come through.
Right.
Are they seeing gaps? Are they seeing things that their kids are missing now? That would be helpful in
Mm.
their work of educating and continuing to educate kids.
Mm.
So is that some, how would we do that? Like, would we
Mm.
do a mailing or just like make some phone calls to people that we might know and ask them?
I like the idea of piggybacking, which I sort of was getting from what you were saying, Julie, of piggybacking a questionnaire into some larger sort of community. I don't know what that event might be, but here's information coming to you from the town, and here's an included sheet of questions that we'd love to get back from you. And here are the places you could drop them off, or pop them in the mail and send them to us, or / maybe even online. But that would reach a whole range of different people, and maybe in a way that would, again, piggyback some of the cost of getting stuff out into a larger informational document.
So would you have like a questionnaire that has a place where you check which kind of category you want to answer the questions from? So if someone's maybe a junior in college and they're answering it, that's from our community, we're getting it from that perspective, versus maybe someone's answering it as an employer. I don't know. I mean, you make a questionnaire sheet that has different categories, and the people kind of check, what perspective they're answering from.
So as you think about your work, I guess I'm thinking, is that how would you use that information to inform your work as a board? And I guess how would you use that information?
As you go through all those return surveys, you see where the overlap is. It'd be, is there a certain consensus on what skills or values or education is kind of in agreement.
Mhm.
It's like
Another
data.
option.
It's like a data collection.
Right. I was thinking another avenue could be to create an electronic form and circulate that as widely as you can. What's nice about that is, in addition to the paper copy, is it is much easier to see those patterns and trends electronically than, for you as a board to go through all those hard copy ones. If you actually want to do something with that information, it will take a lot of time for you to do that manually. And so you just want to, I know time has been a factor for many of you coming up, and that would take you a lot of time to go through.
I don't disagree. I think, though, if we could find a combination, because I know many of my neighbors who are not particularly savvy or connected in the virtual world.
Yeah.
So
a combination, I think, is important.
You exclude your elderly population.
Right, a lot of, or many of.
And also, I think we're going to have to come up with multiple ways to do this, right? Like I think we should have a short and sweet set of questions. And I like the idea of, mass mailing that includes a link to the electronic form, and then an option for just sending it in if that's unavailable to people. But I also think we're probably going to have to put the rubber to the road and seek people out probably especially employers. Just to make sure that we get, because I do think that that's an important category. Like, I don't know, there's probably a lot of people that are running businesses that are very busy and might just ignore that or don't even read their town report or don't even pay attention to that. And it is still important to, maybe we can create a list of business owners in the town or leaders in our community and just sort of divvy it up and have all of us make a few phone calls a month or something like that. I mean, we're planning on doing this collection. What was I don't have the work plan in front of us, but we had something.
Didn't we want to have the questionnaire done by like the beginning of the year, something like that? Wasn't that our goal, like to have?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's what it was, something like.
And have it ready to go the beginning of the year or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of what you had talked about, was kind of getting through budget season, getting through the election.
Yeah.
And in January, being ready to distribute.
Okay.
Which, if we could put it in the town report, would jive well for that, time-wise.
That's right. And I wondered also about venues like, although I don't use a lot of them, I know that they're like the Front Porch Forum and I don't know, possible Facebook ways of utilizing those platforms to get the information we need more accessible to people and gatherable for us as well. And again, I'm a very sort of Luddite about a lot of those things, but I know that they do streamline stuff and make it more gatherable, as you were describing, Randy, right? I don't know about the legality of any of that stuff, but
yeah, I know in Pollitt, the clerk has there's a Facebook page where she just posts like meeting warnings and things like that, and things that are sort of relevant to town. We could ask her to share the link to our survey on that and on the town run website. I don't know if Rupert has anything like that, but that's an idea for Pollitt.
Yeah, we do have, I think, a participatory and energized clerk in the form of Andy Lenhart. So I would imagine that she would be willing to, make possible, if it was possible for her, anything to help facilitate this sort of a gathering project. I'm speaking for her, but she's a very helpful, cooperative, community-minded person.
Perfect. Okay. So then the other part of the question was to come up with questions. And we touched on those being sort of short and sweet. So, I mean, what are we thinking? Like 5 or 6? Simple. Yeah.
Half a dozen questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage you to keep it as short as you can, because if you want people to respond, it needs to be quick and easy for them. If they look at it and feel like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, your return rate's going to be really low.
Mm-hmm.
You might even think of doing less than that,
Right. That's
what are your 2 or 3 big questions you want to know?
Yeah.
And maybe we could leave a space if people have any kind of a comment to make. That way, if they're feeling more, communicative, we can get to hear their perspective.
Okay. So maybe one question about skills, one question about values, and then.
Are these open-ended questions then?
Well, I think we'll have to write questions. I'm just
saying for them, would we give them an open-ended or would it be a ranking of how important is blah, blah, blah to you?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm just trying to imagine a survey collating all of that information. If everybody gives a different answer, that would be
It would be sort of like,
drive it either.
how
Necessarily.
important is this to you, from 1 being the most important to 5 being the least? That kind of an idea, Corey?
Maybe, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out how to get all of this information to make sense.
It's a good point.
And I'm thinking, like, I guess one of my thoughts that I would share is that if you talk about skills, what is it you're actually looking for as a board? Are you thinking that you would be, would you be guiding me about skills that you want to make sure that Mettawee community students have? Or is that really what you're looking for? Or is it something more broad to guide our work?
So I think for me, like my goal in this is, if as we're looking at policy governance, we are going to need to create ends policies. And I just don't feel comfortable deciding for my community what's really, really important to them. And I don't feel comfortable telling you how you should do, this job for our community without gathering some information from our community.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think-
You're not wanting people to respond to, I want our kids to read or I want our kids to write. Are you, is that what you, when you think about skills, is that the level of specificity you're looking for? Or do you want, are you looking for, hey, I want our kids to have the academic skills or the technical skills or whatever to be able to be successful, whatever they choose to do? Like, there, you want to think about your questions to get at what it is you're actually looking for, because a list of every community member talking about what they prioritize from an academic curriculum is probably not really, I don't think, what you'd be looking for. And I might be wrong, but that's far less useful to you and to me than understanding those more global skills that
Right.
you want.
So does anyone have, we have that one question, what skills and values do you feel are lacking in our young community? I don't know. I feel like I'm not ready to deal with the questions thing tonight. I don't think I have, unless anyone has anything that they want to say right now, that they are thinking of right now.
I agree with you, just because I'm feeling just a little foggy, but I do think that the questions should be framed in a positive context. Like the one that you just read out as an example has to do with what's lacking. I think we should frame these things in the direction of, what outcomes would you like to see? So that it's more about fulfilling things. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I get what you mean. I get, like,
So that it has
what things are important to you to see kids have to be successful, kind of, rather than what's wrong with these damn kids these days.
What skills and values do you want our graduates to have?
Right.
When they leave our system, or when they,
right.
Something that is focused on that big long-term outcome.
Okay.
And that would also potentially even point in a direction of kind of determining how important is it for members of our community that kids go through our system and they're really college ready, which is a question that came up in a conversation I was having with some friends recently that I thought was really interesting. And I was surprised that some of those opinions were as different as they were. But, that, as compared to necessarily finding a place in the workforce, might be a really important question to ask, because it really is a distinguishing difference. Yeah, I really feel it's important for my kid to go to college. Or, hey, I'm perfectly happy if my kid decides to go to trade school or learns how to run a dairy farm well, et cetera, that are I'm not using good examples, but that are not necessarily a traditionally oriented high school graduated student path. So I don't know how we might be able to hone in on that a little bit. Might be an important distinction.
Okay.
Wow, only 40% of our population, according to the survey, care whether their kid goes to college or not. Gee, or wow, 80% do, or whatever the number is. Might be a valuable one to
Yeah, I
find.
mean, that's a good question. Maybe the question is what does it mean to you for a graduate to be college and career ready?
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Career
Be
ready.
career ready. And is that
College and career ready, meaning,
sure? Yeah.
and it would probably tap into exactly what Michael's talking about. It would mean to me that kids can do this or whatever.
And allows for the possibility of life skills rather than
Right.
just whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll, can everyone work on coming up with a list of like 3 or 4 questions for the next meeting? And then we will just sort of wordsmith and drive those into 3 or 4 questions that we would be ready to put into action. I think we have good ideas on how to put those into action. Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that brings us to board updates. I do have something that I wanted to mention. I just want to take the time to publicly acknowledge and thank our staff, our teachers, our principals, our custodians, our nurses, our bus drivers, everybody who is doing an incredible amount of incredibly difficult things in this crazy world that we're all living in. I know, my son's in 5th grade and he had, I'm going to cry. It's okay. I'm a crier. I just do that. But I mean, he had a meeting one day and it was incredible. His teacher was doing meetings with like games that they could play interactively on the computer with kids that are home and kids that are in the school so that they could have that sort of sense of community. And he struggled with being able to do one of the things and getting on and accessing the game at the same time as his friends. And his teacher literally stayed on and played the game again so that he had that opportunity. And she didn't have to do that. And it was squeezing her schedule, but she did it. And it was really great. And he had a meeting with the librarian when he was struggling to come up with a just right book for himself. And what does that even mean to me, Mom? And she had a meeting with him. She just set it up and said, let's talk. Let's just talk face to face and get through this. And I know, when the kids turn in their stuff, they're getting personal comments from their teacher on how they're doing. They're not just getting a grade, they're getting an actual comment back. And it's just obvious to me that there's that our teachers and our staff are not, they're not their best because they're talented. They're really their best because they care. And so I would like to acknowledge that.
That is so true. That's wonderful. I'm really proud of our students too. I'm reaching out to some of our older students setting up iReady times. And I was so impressed with 3 5th graders that got back to me in an email letting me know that they're ready for their test, and their correspondence was so respectful. Like, I'm so proud of how far our kids have come with just their communication, being at home and communicating their needs at our school, which is great to see those real life skills of problem solving, self-direction, being independent, all those skills of transferable skills that we're seeing some of our students in the distance using with our staff here, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I think I would just add that I agree 100%. This is very, very difficult work under very, very difficult conditions. And our baseline stress for everyone is really high. And our teachers are working very hard. All of our staff are working very hard. And I think acknowledging that is important. I appreciate the fact that you did that, and I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Does anyone else have an update?
I have a quick update about, well, just a reminder. I attended the VSBA regional meeting I don't know, last week, 2 weeks ago. And there's the VSBA annual meeting on 10/29 at 5, and it's a virtual meeting, just to remind everybody if they're interested.
Thank you. Appreciate that reminder. Okay, our next meeting will be another Zoom meeting, November 9th at 6:30. And then we have board self-evaluation. I didn't.
Looks like we did not include a
form,
copy in here.
but that's okay. We can just wing it. I think we spent a significant amount of time on community engagement, which is good. Does anyone have anything that they feel like we need to really work on? Change, doing differently from this meeting?
I personally, I just want to put out that I feel like there is a level of trust that we all have that allows us to speak what feels true to us, even if that means, gee, I really don't know. And I genuinely appreciate that we have that has grown over the time that we have gotten to spend together. And also, I feel like people are all individually, personally committed to making this a kind of safe and cooperative space. And it feels very constructive in that way. That's my collective self-evaluation. I think we're doing all right.
Agreed. I don't know. Not having the sheet in front of me, and also I feel like I'm just tired, and I feel like we had a good meeting. Does anyone mind if we just skip ahead to the public comment section? Okay. Celeste, are there any public comments that you can see?
I actually don't think that she's on.
Oh, okay.
I think she had to step away.
Okay.
I don't have access to it.
I don't.
So what we could say is that there is a dial-in number. So if there's any public who would like to call in on the number on the agenda, which is 1-646-558-8659. 646-558-8656. Oh, 8656. Yeah. Is that what I said? I said 9 before, right? Sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry, as if it's not confusing enough. The last 4 numbers are 8656. So if you want to call, now that I've eaten up all this time with my incorrect numbers. I don't see anybody dialing in yet. We can wait maybe another few seconds and see.
Okay.
Probably enough time if somebody wanted to call.
Okay. Okay, so not seeing any, I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:12. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Julie.
you.
Good job.
Thank you all very much.
Hang in there, folks.
Yep, thanks.
So.
Bye.
Bye.